What's going on, my roundtable? My name is Excaliber596, and I own a metric ass ton of games that I have either never played or never finished, and that haunts my dreams to the point where my nightmares are having nightmares. So I created a system where I randomly pick a game to play based on the roll of a 20-sided die, cause I'm one of those nerds. But then I thought to myself, hey, this might help me with the game review part of my game review channel. So I've decided that I'm gonna review some of the games that I play using this method. Here's how it's gonna work. After I finish playing the randomized game, it and the next 2 games I play are gonna be put in a single video. I talk about each game and share my thoughts for 5 minutes each and finish with a rating that is scored from 1 to 10. 1 being an unplayable game, 5 being an average game, and 10 being an amazing game. So with all this in mind, let us begin with the first ever randomized reviews with Excaliber596. Woo! The first game the dice rolled on was The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past for the SNES, and this game always kind of confused me whenever I heard about Zelda. It was always being compared to some of the best Zelda games like Ocarina or Majora's Mask, but I never really understood what was so great about it. Mainly because I was a dumb kid who had this notion that 3D games are always better than 2D games, so I never even wanted to give it a chance. Since then, however, I have learned the error of my ways, and even went so far as to get an SNES Classic and a replacement for said SNES Classic, cause I busted the first one like a dad who's too stubborn to take his iPhone to the Apple Store. And boy, am I glad I made that decision. The SNES, not the iPhone. This game is freaking awesome. First of all, the game looks fantastic. The land of Hyrule is a kingdom filled to the brim with color and life, especially in the small towns and forests where you can even see people and animals running around. Then on the opposite side of things, the Dark World feels barren and grim, like there's danger around every corner. All of the sprites are adorable enough to wish for a plushie for, yet imposing enough to think, maybe not. Which is a really nice stylistic choice for an action game like Zelda. And honestly, I just love how Link walks like a penguin. Then A Link to the Past sounds just as good as it looks. Each piece of music perfectly captures the setting with a fun and exciting mix of songs that will really pump you up. Most of them will sound familiar to a Zelda fan, like the overworld theme of Hyrule, but some standout tracks include the Dark World theme, which contrasts Hyrule nicely as its fun and adventurous tone is met with a slightly lower one, making it seem like this is when the adventure truly got serious. And the boss theme is good! As soon as you hear that, you know that it is all like Donkey Kong. Let's do this, Scaly! The story to A Link to the Past is, well, it's the classic Zelda formula. Get a sword, meet Zelda, get 3 thingies, master sword, more thingies, Ganon, done. There are very few things in the main story that actually managed to surprise me apart from like 2 things, and the only thing that really impressed me was a 3rd thing from a side quest. However, an aspect to the world that I find awesome was the Dark World, which is essentially a cursed land opposite to Hyrule that has been taken over by Ganon and overrun with monsters and people who have been turned into monsters due to the world's effects. This leads to a lot of interesting side quests where the people of Hyrule ask you to find someone that has been trapped in the Dark World, making for some very rewarding experiences. Finally, the gameplay of Link to the Past is really something special. As is with usual Zelda games, there are multiple dungeons littered throughout the land of Hyrule, and it's your job to go find them and get the bosses inside with an item that you find somewhere in the game. What's cool about Link to the Past, however, is the emphasis on the word somewhere. In many Zelda games after this, the item used to complete a dungeon is found in that dungeon and serves as a kind of hint to many of the puzzles that players couldn't complete before. While there's nothing necessarily wrong with that approach, Link to the Past adds on to it as many of the dungeon's items are found somewhere in the overworld, giving it this extra sense that you're exploring the land of Hyrule, looking for clues and hints as to where they could possibly be. Now, while this is also a fantastic approach, it does make it a little easier to get lost in the game at times, which can be frustrating if you simply wish to progress and you have no leads on where the item could be. It's never too bad, however, as there are small details around Hyrule that are designed to catch your eye, so that you explore them and find what it is you're looking for. The items in the game are really fun to complete puzzles with and use around the overworld. The magic mirror in particular is really interesting as it allows you to switch from the Dark World to Hyrule. This creates fun and unique puzzles that involve switching between the 2 worlds in order to access something in one that you couldn't access in the other. Finally, the bosses all have fantastic designs, and their fights are exciting and memorable, like the Moldorm Balancing Act and the total smash fest of the Helmarok King. Quick side note, if you don't find spamming the sword beams with the Master Sword fun, then you should retire as a human being. Overall, I can understand completely why this game is compared to some of the greats in the Zelda series. It's colorful, has great music, and is one of the most fun Zelda games out there. 8.5 out of 10. This game is really great. Game number 2 was Zoids Battle Legends for the GameCube, and for those of you who don't know what Zoids are, I really don't blame you. Zoids is a line of model kits made by Takara Tomy that made motorized giant animal robots that make my particle cannon charge. It was really big for me when I was a kid, and with the anime on Toonami that I absolutely loved growing up. And much to my happiness, they made a few video games that I never got to play. But now that I finally got a copy, I can tell you with full confidence that I wasn't missing much. First of all, the game doesn't look all that great. All of the environments have barely any texture, and the Zoids all look like they were made with Legos. Which I guess isn't a huge deal, as Zoids are pretty blocky in the real world, considering the fact that they're model kits, but come on, they could have done a little bit better with GameCube graphics. Second of all, the sound design in this game is complete trash. The music itself is fine, it definitely invokes the feel of Zoids if you watch the shows, and the sounds of the Zoids and their weapons are accurate to the show. But there's voice acting in this game, and oh my god, it's hilariously bad. The pilots will just shout random nonsense whenever you do anything. I'm gonna hit it. It doesn't look like you hit it there, pal. Wanna try again?
No, not yet.
Oh really, Zan? Cause that time you hit him, you saying I shouldn't have done that?
Say, hear the Zoids voices?
Yes, and they're telling you to get the hell out and let a real pilot in before you hurt yourself, you done fuck! Now, unsurprisingly for a licensed title in the GameCube era, this game has a story mode, and it's probably worse than you expect it to be. The main plot here is that you can choose between one of two warring nations, and either way, you go after this third faction that's stealing some rare Zoids from you. But the premise is not the bad thing about the story. The bad thing about the story is that it has more holes than a Disney live-action film.
Take it out,
Do it!
take it out,
It's filled with references to stuff that never happens. Believe it or not, there's an actual reason for this. See, this game is actually a sequel to a game called Zoids Versus in Japan, and that game had a story mode as well. But that game was never released in the West. So for those of us in the States, we got a bad sequel to a story that never existed. Good job, localization team. Good job. Finally, as a concept, Zoids Battle Legends gameplay is actually amazing. Giant customizable robots that shoot each other in an open field just like the show? Genius! On paper. But put into practice, there are a few issues. A lot of the Zoids feel really clunky and hard to control. I mean, I know they're robots, but they're animal robots. Could you have given them a bit more of a smooth, agile feel to them? Also, a lot of the weapons are terrible, as many of them are extremely hard to aim because the Zoids keep jumping around, moving the weapon along with it. Like, look at this. There is no reason as to why shooting an enemy in a mecha game should be like trying to catch a fly with a pair of... never mind. As a result, there's a large difference in usability between these weapons and missiles and weapons with lock-on targeting. And then there's the blade weapons, which are on a whole other plane of existence. I mean, I'll give them this, the Blade Lagger's blades are certainly show accurate. Finally, there is melee combat in this game, but it's hardly worth using unless you run out of ammo, because it leaves you practically defenseless, and getting caught in another Zoid's melee is really annoying, because it does a lot of damage and keeps you in the place for the longest frickin' time. Now, one thing that I will heavily compliment this game for is the amount of fan service to Zoids lovers. This game has a hell of a lot of references. The pilot choices include characters from both the show and the games, and the roster of Zoids and customizable options is gigantic, making for a lot of variety in how you play the game. It was for this very reason that I continued to play the game even through some of the roughest patches, and eventually ended up having fun with the gameplay as I got used to the feel of everything. Overall, if you are or were a Zoids fan, I highly recommend this game. You will absolutely love it as you get better with it, and the fan service is beyond compare. However, if you're like many and have never heard of the series, I recommend getting into it for one. They're finally coming out with new models and a new game for the Switch. Please be good, please be good, please be good. But if not, I would skip out on this one. 5 out of 10 for an average game. The final game on my list for today is an indie title called Heart and Slash, developed by A Heartful of Games and published by Badland after a successful Kickstarter campaign. Now, I'm a big fan of hack and slash combat games, so when I first saw this game online, it certainly piqued my interest. I picked it up on the Switch eShop and played it during a road trip with my buddies to Colorado, and I have to say this game really surprised me. First of all, I love everything about the looks to this game. All of the artwork for it is striking and extremely fun to look at, which is one of the reasons I decided to get this over some of the others on my list. And the game itself looks amazing. Everything looks blocky, but not in that lazy Minecraft way everyone's been doing nowadays, thank God. It's more like everything was made to be 3D sprite work, which I'm absolutely in love with. I could honestly see the developers making a 2D spin-off of this title and everything would still look amazing. The fun style of the game is then met with barren yet somehow fun environments that are simplistic and memorable. The soundtrack to Heart and Slash is great. Many of the tracks in this game fit the tone of the situation nicely and are accompanied by a crisp techno-funk beat that I could honestly see being played in any club. Now, I will say that some of the tracks are hard to notice because all of the clanging metal sounds in the game, but when a song is noticeable, it really makes a statement. The best ones, I would say, are the main environment tracks and a couple of the boss fight tracks that'll get you in a groove and mood. The story to Heart and Slash is somewhat simple when you start out. The game begins with a tutorial of a prototype of your character Heart as he's tested out against your rival Slash. After the tutorial is finished, the scientist who created you leaves after an alert stating that the Quality Assurance System, or Quasi, has rebelled against mankind and has taken over the other robots in the factory, and after a quick, almost scripted fight with Slash, you begin the game as the completed Heart unit in the factory and go on from there. Now, I said that this was simple starting out, but things get more interesting as you explore the worlds around you and you see multiple signs of destruction, presumably caused by the uprising. This is why I say the game seems barren, as you notice no significant signs of life as you explore the worlds of the games, and the maps appear littered with nothing but robot propaganda and brainwashed bots, which definitely adds to the feel that the story wants to invoke. Finally, the gameplay to Heart and Slash is very addicting. As a hack and slash crossed with a dungeon crawler, this game's combat is surprisingly expansive and almost never repetitive, because of many ingenious ideas that the devs had to ensure the game's longevity. First of all, this game is difficult when starting out, as you begin with weak equipment and very few ways to heal. There are also no save points throughout the entire game, so if you die, you start over from scratch. Now, normally this would be considered cruel, but while the game has a large difficulty curve, the game's in-game achievements are plentiful and in no way hard to accomplish, and every achievement gives you a new weapon or armor piece that could be randomized in the next game to improve your odds of success, taking you farther and farther into the game's final stages. The weapons in the games are each unique from each other, each sporting a different fighting style and effect based on how you upgrade the weapon. There are also plenty of armor pieces that give you bonus abilities like a rocket pack or a laser. The possible combinations with these tools are endless, making every single run through this game unique with a basically random level of difficulty to make things interesting. The only real problems I have with it are that the character moves a little fast when you start out, which you will get used to, that's more of like a nitpick. And the problems with the camera that many hack and slash games seem to suffer from still have their issues here, so don't expect a fix on that quite yet. All in all, Heart and Slash is a surprisingly enjoyable experience that I would recommend to any indie player. Despite a few issues with the camera and movement, there's a ton of variety, the art design is fantastic, and the gameplay is almost mobile game levels of addicting. Oh, and I have a bit of advice for those who play it. Always bet on black, and remember, there's nothing more noble than self-sacrifice. With that in mind, I give this game a 7.5 out of 10 for a pretty good game. That'll be about all till next time. I hope you guys liked the video. Tell me what you think in the comment section below, and make sure you like, share, ring the bell, and subscribe, and I will call you guys for the next console. Later.